In Tombstone, 1993, Doc Holliday, masterfully portrayed by Val Kilmer, is presented as a loyal ally of Wyatt Earp, committed to restoring order amidst the chaos of an Old West town. Kilmer brought to life a character full of nuance, both cynical and imbued with a peculiar sense of honor. However, the historical reality of the real Doc Holliday is far more complex and perhaps less glamorous. Let's start from the beginning. John Henry Holliday was born on August 4, 1851, in Griffin, Georgia, a town that today is part of the greater Atlanta metropolitan area. He was the only surviving child of his generation in his family, as his older sister died during childbirth. His father, Henry Major Holliday, was a man of strong convictions, a veteran of several battles, including the Mexican-American War. It was upon returning from that war that he brought home a Mexican orphan named Francisco Hidalgo, a gesture that adds an even more fascinating layer to the Holliday family story. With these roots, Doc grew up in a world of contrasts. His journey is a mix of personal tragedy, tough choices, and above all, a constant struggle to find his place in an unforgiving world. The legendary gentleman gunslinger carried with him not only the skill to handle weapons, but also the complexities of a man who, straddling myth and reality, continues to intrigue generations. Young John Henry Holliday grew up surrounded by contrasts that shaped his complex personality. Living on a farm in the Deep South, he experienced the hardships of frontier life, unpredictable weather, grueling labor, and the region's characteristic humid air. His Scots-Irish heritage and Protestant upbringing reflected the traditions of the time, while his childhood struck a unique balance between discipline and freedom. John's mother, ever attentive, was devoted to teaching him etiquette and good manners, instilling the politeness that would later set him apart. His father, Major Henry Holliday, captivated the young boy with vivid stories of his wartime experiences and practical lessons in survival. John's life was structured yet filled with tales that fueled his imagination. At 9 years old, the Civil War broke out, and the Major left once again for the battlefield. Before his departure, the family had moved even further south, to the border between Georgia and Florida, seeking a fresh start. Despite the challenges, John excelled in school, though his rebellious nature became a topic of conversation among the neighbors. In 1866, tragedy struck when his mother succumbed to tuberculosis, deeply affecting young John. Less than a year later, his father remarried, this time to a woman 8 years older than John. This decision created a rift between father and son, leaving scars that would stay with him for the rest of his life. During this period of loss and adjustment, the seeds of John's independence, and perhaps his rebellious streak, began to take root. John Henry Holliday left the comfort of home in 1869 to enroll in the prestigious Pennsylvania College of Dental Surgery, one of the top institutions of its kind at the time. Through hard work and dedication, he excelled in his studies and earned his dental license in 1872. After graduation, he spent some time in St. Louis working in a colleague's dental practice before returning to Georgia, where his life took an unexpected turn. This return marked the beginning of a tumultuous chapter in Holliday's story. In 1872, he became involved in a grim incident that gained attention in the biography Doc Holliday, The Life and Legend by Gary Roberts, which drew on accounts from writer Bat Masterson published in 1907. According to these stories, Holliday was at the center of a violent conflict with tragic consequences. The tale goes that Holliday was at a bar in Georgia with friends when a group of African-American men entered the establishment. Feeling offended, he allegedly demanded that they leave. When they didn't comply, he pulled a gun and fired, reportedly hitting between 1 and 3 individuals, resulting in fatalities. While the details are murky and based on conflicting accounts, this episode revealed a darker side of Holliday, a figure steeped in legend but not immune to the prejudices and tensions of his time. Doc Holliday's story is full of nuance, and some events have been questioned by historians over time. For instance, the incident reported by Bat Masterson in 1907, which described Holliday as responsible for a deadly altercation, is seen by some historians as possibly inaccurate due to inconsistencies in the accounts. However, given Holliday's fiery temperament and his reputation, violence wouldn't be entirely out of character for him. Around this time, Holliday received a life-changing diagnosis: tuberculosis. The same illness that had claimed his mother's life now afflicted him. With no effective treatments available at the time, it was believed that a dry climate could help alleviate the symptoms, even if it couldn't provide a cure. Whether it was to escape trouble in his hometown or to seek relief for his declining health, Holliday headed to Dallas in 1872. In Dallas, he opened a dental practice, but it didn't last long. The tuberculosis brought with it a persistent cough, driving patients away and making it impossible to sustain a stable business. Determined to make a living, Doc turned to gambling as a new source of income. Faro, a popular betting game, became his specialty. Smart, charming, and naturally skilled at keeping a poker face, Holliday quickly made a name for himself as a faro dealer in various saloons. Faro, which pitted the dealer against the players, was notoriously easy to rig, an advantage Holliday skillfully exploited. Doc Holliday was the kind of man who made a name for himself and enemies with equal ease. A master at faro, a card game he excelled at like few others, he had the skill, or as some might say, the knack, for winning so consistently it often sparked accusations of cheating. In the years that followed, his talent at the table frequently got him into trouble with the law in Dallas, leading to regular arrests and fines. Tired of constantly looking over his shoulder, Doc decided to head west, playing faro in saloons along the way as he explored the American Southwest. Life on the road wasn't without its challenges. It wasn't unusual for a dispute over cards or a poorly chosen word to escalate into threats, or even gunfights. The gun-handling skills he'd learned as a young man proved invaluable in rough territories like Texas, Kansas, and Wyoming. At one point, Doc landed in New Mexico, where he made enough money to open his own saloon. There, he continued his nights of gambling and drinking. His reputation as a ruthless man preceded him wherever he went. Once, during a heated card game, a player refused to follow Doc's faro rules. Doc responded harshly, further solidifying his image as someone who wouldn't tolerate disobedience. It's no surprise that at one time or another, he found himself on the radar of both local marshals and the Texas Rangers. The trouble started when an Army scout lost control and decided to fire shots inside Doc Holliday's saloon. Without hesitation, Doc stepped in to handle the situation, and the confrontation ended with the man dead. It wasn't the first time Holliday solved a problem that way, but that night would kick off a chain of events that eventually led him to Tombstone, Arizona. It was in Tombstone that Holliday met Wyatt Earp, a lawman with a reputation as solid as his determination. The setting for their first encounter couldn't have been more fitting: a faro table. At the time, Earp was far from Dodge City, tracking Dave Rudabaugh, a notorious train robber. Word had it that justice wasn't his main motivation. The cash reward was the real incentive. During the game, the conversation drifted to Rudabaugh, and Holliday mentioned he'd heard the criminal was heading back to Kansas. That tip turned out to be crucial. Earp passed the intel to a contact in his hometown, and soon after, Rudabaugh was captured. As for the faro game itself, the outcome was as unclear as the fate of the reward money. Perhaps in that moment, Doc and Earp forged a partnership that would go on to create some of the Wild West's most legendary stories. In a story that blurs the line between fact and legend, Wyatt Earp is said to have claimed that Doc Holliday saved his life in Dodge City back in 1879. At the time, Holliday was in town with his partner, Big Nose Kate, when a cowboy named Tavo Driscoll tried to ambush Earp. Driscoll pulled a gun and aimed it at Earp, but before he could fire, Doc quietly appeared behind him, pressing the barrel of his own gun to the side of Driscoll's head. That was enough to make Driscoll back down and drop his weapon. Afterward, Earp reportedly said he owed his life to Holliday. Whether the story is true or just another exaggerated tale from the Old West, no one knows for sure. What is certain is that in 1881, Earp wrote to Holliday, suggesting he join him in Tombstone. Officially, Earp mentioned the town's need for a dentist, but it's more likely he wanted his skilled faro-dealing friend by his side, and someone who, like him, knew how to seize opportunities in a booming mining town. That move to Tombstone would turn Holliday into an iconic figure, cementing his name in the lore of the Wild West. Doc Holliday was never exactly a lawman, and his presence at the legendary OK Corral shootout seemed to have more to do with his loyalty to Wyatt Earp and his readiness for a good fight than any sense of justice. The shootout, which actually happened in a lot near the OK Corral, was the climax of growing tensions between the Earp brothers and Ike Clanton, the leader of a group of outlaws. Rumors had been swirling before the event, fueling the hostility. It's said that Clanton spread stories accusing Holliday of robbing a stagecoach and didn't hold back from insulting Big Nose Kate, Doc's partner, calling her a prostitute. Other versions suggest that Clanton was enraged after a faro game, accusing Holliday and the Earps of cheating. Whatever the reason, when the time came, Holliday didn't hesitate to draw his gun. The shootout itself was short and brutal, just 30 seconds. When the dust settled, 3 men were dead and others were wounded. No one knows for sure who fired the first shot, but the fatal bullet that claimed the first life came from Holliday's gun. Over the years, the story has been told and retold, with details added or adjusted to make sense of the chaos. Whether Holliday had a clear reason to be there or not, one thing is certain. That moment cemented his reputation as one of the most dangerous and unforgettable figures of the Wild West. The truth about the OK Corral shootout is as elusive as a desert mirage. Some say Ike Clanton, one of the supposed antagonists, wasn't even armed. But separating fact from fiction in this episode is about as tricky as finding Bigfoot. After the shootout, Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp were put on trial for murder. Both were acquitted, but Holliday couldn't escape the fallout. In the years that followed, his life was marked by attempts on his safety and his steadily declining health. Seeking refuge, Doc ended up in Colorado, but the move brought little relief. His body was succumbing to tuberculosis, and he turned to alcohol and opium for comfort. At just 37 years old in 1887, Doc Holliday died in Glenwood Springs, claimed by the same disease that had taken his mother. Wyatt Earp, on the other hand, lived long enough to see his legend immortalized. He moved to Los Angeles in the early 20th century, where his life was rewritten with the glamour of Hollywood. The romanticized biography Wyatt Earp, Frontier Marshal, elevated him to a symbol of the Old West, with Holliday standing by his side as the loyal, heroic gunslinger. But historical records tell a different story. Doc Holliday, the notorious gambler and gunslinger, might not have been the hero those tales suggest. Even so, the blend of myth and reality turned his life into a fascinating story. And in the end, isn't that what all Western legends aim to be?